Welcome back. This is so awesome. I'm so glad that we get to do another part and add to some of the things that you've shared before. So I thought maybe this time we would talk a little bit more about generational traumas and things that you're aware of as far as, how you've seen it play out as far as your family and how you've seen it play out in possibly your children. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I feel fortunate to be able to be here and to talk with you. So thanks again for that. But trauma through the bloodline is something that it just gets past you. You have no idea that it's there. It does show up in your life. It affects your personal psyche. It affects your daily routines. It could be the stem of alcoholism. It could be the stem of addiction. It could be the stem of just mental un-wellbeing. And it does go down the bloodline. So it could be passed from your great-grandparents, your great-great-grandparents, your grandparents, to your mother, to you, to your children. If not dealt with in an appropriate manner, and kind of hitting the nail on the head and dealing with it, it just continues to show its face.
In some of the sessions, we talk about how it's actually transferred, and not only just transferred, but we can actually see the patterns go from one to the other to the other. And not only for people, but if we talk about the patterns in the emotion, and so let's say there's something that happens, we talk a lot about the first 7 years of life and how that actually holds us in a way hostage, like some of that subconscious, thought processes that create how we deal with things for the rest of our life. And so sometimes when we don't deal with those little things, or deal with those first 7 years, that pattern keeps showing up. So, like let's say there's a lot of something that goes on, there's anger that shows up. Next thing you know, we're showing up anger, and then we're happening again, it's happening again, it's happening again. But when we look back, we're responding to it as if it's still happening in that moment. So if we have anger that's, let's say, 2.5 years old, sometimes we'll see adults that seem to be acting like they're 2 when they're having these fits and these anger issues that are showing up. Have you seen anything in your life that has been repeated over and over?
Yeah, I mean, for me specifically, I was dealt a pretty tough hand, as I'm sure a lot of people have, but it constantly just comes up. It shows face. You don't know why it's there. It's hard to understand why you're feeling that way. Anger is something that just shows its face. It could be coming from your mom. It could be coming from your dad. It could be coming from your ancestors and great-grandparents. It's out of your control. And when you start to think about what is the root cause of where it's coming from, it's not something that you can just understand. You don't realize where it's coming from because it's passed to you and transferred to you, and it consumes you. It's powerful. You don't know it until you're hit by it, and by the time you're hit by it, it's already consumed you. And kind of like you said, it continues to show up, and it continues to show up, and it continues to show up.
Yeah. One of the things that I always say is, if you ever say to yourself, I don't know why this happened, then I always say, go back then. Because if you don't know, that means that it's in the subconscious thinking. Because in the first 7 years, most children, or when we're little, we don't have logic. And so if something happens and we have this, I don't know why I just did that, boom. That means it's in the first 7 years, because there's no logic to how we act and react as children. So it's one of the things that we talk a lot about, and it's one of the things that I say, be aware when you're working through your traumas, because if you don't know why it's happening, boom, that tells you it's either generational or it's the first 7 years of your life, right?
Yeah, I think that's very true, and it's crucial to understand that, because within the first 7 years of your life, you don't know what's going on. You're the small little things you tell your children And parents out there, just really recognize how you're talking to your children, because it's important. No, you can't do that. You're smarter than that. You should know better than that. Why don't you be more like your brother? Why don't you do it like this? Why would you do that? Those are all things that, from a young kid's mind frame, they have no idea why you're telling them that.
Nope.
They just feel that they aren't good enough to impress you, and they take that in, and that can destroy them moving forward. I'm speaking from that on a first-hand basis, because looking back into generational stuff, that's exactly what happened to me as well. So it's, watch how you talk to your children, because it's very important.
When we did some of the stuff we worked on generational stuff. Do you think that was a part of what you were struggling with as well?
I strongly agree with that. We have done some very powerful generational cutting cords, and I'm not the type of person to believe in out-of-body experiences. However, I most certainly experienced an out-of-body experience that was beyond my control, and so much so I called my mom the evening of, and she asked me what had happened, because she had felt it herself. So I do believe that this is powerful stuff, and it's not just dealing with you, it's dealing with your ancestors or your bloodline from previous generations, as well as it can be passed down to your children. So if your children are suffering from ADHD, ADD, all of these problems that are diagnosed from them, take a good look inside of yourself and see what you're hiding first. Because before you get that diagnosis, I think it's imperative that you understand where you are and what you're dealing with before you blame your kids for that.
Yeah. I do agree. It's important to look and say, what kind of stress have the children gone through, right? If they're struggling with that, what does that look like? What is the family dynamics around that, right?
Yeah.